Welcome to Study Abroad Like a G, the podcast. My name is Justine, and I am the host and founder of Study Abroad Like a G, where G means global citizen. I believe that it is extremely important to be a conscious traveler everywhere you go. And here, I'm going to share with you some of my stories, and trust me, I've got a lot of them. I also want to introduce you to some of my friends, who I also call my global homies, and we're going to serve as the plug to all your study abroad needs. We're going to give you some knowledge on things we wish we knew when we were applying, studying abroad, and even when we returned. I also want to help you navigate through the study abroad networks. And here, I also want to teach you how to use your experience to your benefit in life. Alrighty, let's get ready for our adventure. Now it's time to buckle up because we're about to visit another country. Here's a few hints. 1. They have the world's largest railway. 2. They're second in producing the most amount of oil in the world. And 3. They have the fastest means of transportation. Can you guess where we're going? You're right. We're going to St. Petersburg, Russia. Now that we have landed in St. Petersburg, Russia, I'm going to dive right into our topic. So our topic today is about being a member of the LGBTQ plus community and navigating in the space of studying abroad and how to do that. One of my friends from high school coming in and speaking today, Ryan. So I'm just going to go on and read his bio because it's absolutely amazing. Ryan Leach is a New York-based actor, writer, comedian, originally from Virginia. Film credits include We Demand, Little Man at Sundance, and The Ducks Migration at Outfest. Television credits include Comedy Central's The Other Two and At Home with Amy Sedaris on True TV. He has performed at La Mama, Here Art Center, Ars Nova, Dixon Place, and the New York International Fringe Festival. His comedy has been seen at Broadway Comedy Club, MTV News, Stand Up New York, Littlefield, Union Hall, the Bell House, Upright Citizen Brigade, Caveat, and more. He is also a proud founder of Off Magazine, the first online LGBTQ plus satire publication. I want you all to meet Ryan Leach. All right, everybody, and here is our global homie for this episode, Ryan Leach. Y'all, we've known each other since high school, so our relationship is, it's been over 10 years. But Ryan, I want you to tell everybody what you do and your amazingness and how you are being a global homie in this world.
Oh, you're so great. It's so good to see you. My name is Ryan Leach. I have he, him pronouns, and I live in New York City. I live in Brooklyn, New York. I've worked at an experimental theater in the East Village for the last 6 years, and I really enjoy it because I've always loved, traveling and learning things about different cultures. And we deal with a lot of international groups. So every year we do over 90 different productions in the East Village. And we've brought people from China, Korea, Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, Mexico. We've brought people from Italy, England, Scotland, Ireland, France. I mean, all over. We've brought people from Algeria. We've brought people from Kenya. It's really Belarus, Russia, all these places. So that has been really wonderful to participate in that. And I'm also an actor. I'm a comedian. So I run this satire magazine called Off, AWF. and it is a queer satire magazine. And I'm also a features contributor for The Onion, so I write satire for The Onion. And that's been a lot of fun. So that's a little bit about me.
It, I think the one thing I loved when I was reading your bio, I was just like, man, I was like, Ryan is like doing it, and not that I didn't think you weren't, but I was just like, man, like I think from doing forensic speaking in high school to now, I think I just really loved it, and love to see the growth, and then the fact that we were able to travel together during semester at sea. I think it was just another experience for us to have together and to grow. And just seeing your growth afterwards has just been love. I just love seeing it. So I want to
Yeah,
make
I feel so lucky. I feel so, it's been so great to follow you from like everywhere that you've gone, from meeting you in Virginia, then North Carolina, then doing semester at sea. You went to England. Like, it's been amazing.
so. Thank you so much. But first, I'm gonna ask you some questions because I want everybody to um, learn about you in depth and how study abroad became like an option for you. So what encouraged you um to one just think about studying abroad, but also to apply for a semester at sea?
Yeah, well, that's a great story, actually. um, so I went to the University of Virginia. I will say, while UVA is like a really great school and I met a lot of wonderful people there, it was not like my first choice culturally. The reason why I went to UVA is because I got a scholarship. I was on this scholarship called Access UVA, which was this incredible program that actually is not as great as it is. Now it's kind of, they've taken some things away and they've changed it a little bit. But when I had it, they met your full financial need. So if you got accepted into the University of Virginia, you left with no loans. Like, they met your full need, which I thought was incredible. That's the way that all colleges should be, so that they're merit based and not like skewed towards the wealthy and the privileged. And so since I was on the scholarship, I went to the study abroad office after my like second year at UVA. And I was like, I can't do another semester at this school. Please get me out of Charlottesville. I do not want to be here in the fall. I don't like it. I can't do this anymore. What is free for me to study abroad, right? Like, I had some places that I was interested in studying at, but I was like, I'll go anywhere that's free. Like, if it's free, I'll apply. I was really lucky because at the time, the University of Virginia was sponsoring Semester at Sea. And so my scholarship applied to Semester at Sea because of their sponsorship of the program. So I was overjoyed because, I mean, I hadn't really gotten to travel much. Like, I come from like an airline family, so like they have traveled more than your average family, but we weren't like super high income, and so I didn't really get to travel outside the country much before college. So I was like, oh, this is great. I'm going to get to go to Europe. I'm going to get to go to Africa. I'm going to get to go to Latin America and the Caribbean. I was like, oh, I'm so excited. So I applied. I got my scholarship. And then I started applying for the visas, and I went in the fall of 2013.
Yay! And that's so funny because applying to applying to the program, essentially you're like not applying to UVA, but you're applying to be under their standards and under their code of conduct, which was
The honor rule. Yeah.
Which was wild, and I've heard about it because my aunt went to UVA. She was like one of the first Black law students there. And
Wow.
so it was interesting, like talking to her about it. She was like, "Yeah, the honor code and things," and like from then till now, that it still exists and that it's still prevalent. But
I'm not a fan of it. Like, it's don't lie, cheat, or steal. And essentially, like, I don't know if you know the story behind it, but they created it because a student was on the lawn, which is like the center of our campus there, or grounds as they call them. and a student like shot a professor and killed him. And then they were like, whoa, we need to like create an honor code. So I think it's a big waste of money. And I think it's sort of like a lot of things at UVA where it's like tradition that's kind of just for show instead of actually just like having honor. It's more like a bureaucracy that's kind of discriminatory in many ways and inaccessible and difficult to understand. So I'm not a fan of it, but yes, that was fine that it was in semester at C2. I was used to it.
Yeah, I always thought that was interesting, but I think the one thing is I always knew that I could, if I left my iPad down, set my iPad down, and one time I did leave it, and I went back and I was like, oh, it's there. But I mean, honestly, I would have been able to find it. We were all on the ship in the middle of the ocean, you know.
Oh yeah, no one's leaving until we get Justine's iPad back. Like
I would have held that door up. I was like, I need it now.
Yeah, yeah.
But and with that with the how do I say this? So with wanting to leave and to head out, what were some of the things I guess in your community or in your village? What type of encouragement did you get, or did you have encouragement when it came to studying abroad?
Sure. I mean, my family loves travel, but I think every time I leave the country, my mom like cries, you know, because she thinks like something terrible is gonna happen, which I guess is just like being a good mom. I don't know. They were psyched for it. I honestly kind of like didn't tell them until so I went and did an acting program in Oxford like before I did semester at sea.
Mm-hmm.
So I just sort of talked to them and I was like, oh, by the way, I'm leaving in June and I won't be back until December. I'll be out of the country. Don't worry, it's free. You don't have to pay for it. I'll stay in touch with you. You know, that kind of. It was really difficult too because like I didn't have a smartphone then. I had a flip phone. So I was like, I'm really not going to be in contact with you guys. And like, I have some country ass family. So like, they were like, I was like, if you see a phone number you don't recognize, please pick up the phone because it's me. I'm calling you. Like, and my mom, I had to remind her that I would just like, I ended up just emailing my dad and I would have him print out like the emails for my mom and stuff. And that's how I would communicate with them. But they were very supportive. Like they were very proud of me for going to UVA and like taking advantage of opportunities. So they were just like, you know, my dad helped me get like the malaria medicine, like, you know, I'm from Hanover County, Virginia, which kind of has a reputation for like being a little conservative and a little backwoods, you know. And the only place that we could get enough malaria medicine to last the full time was this pharmacy, like this Cold Harbor pharmacy, this like very like small business owned pharmacy that's very cute and like, you know, locally known. And they give all of the medications for the like mission trips that Christians go on.
I mean, that's the way to go. I'm like,
I was like the nurse practitioner who prescribed me the malaria medication, she was like, oh, you're going to have to go to this pharmacy for it because no other pharmacy is going to give you that much malaria medication.
And it's so funny because you don't think about these things. And like you're in Hanover, which depending on where, because the lines are so curvy and undivided, so such in a messed up way.
Sure.
When it comes to like even being in Chesterfield and Richmond, I never thought of the idea that like somebody's gonna have a hard time who's in, you know, this major area, who's gonna have a hard time getting you know, medicine where you're 35 minutes away drive.
Yeah, well, Hanover tries to make it feel like you're like a couple of decades away from Richmond. You know what I mean?
That is true. You'll be 15 minutes up the street. You're like, like.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. We're not always getting the good press in Hanover, but I mean, it's good that at least like that stuff's getting attention so that we can change it. You know what I mean?
No, and I think that's important because access to not just information, but especially like medical information and medical access is huge, because some people don't get it. And you don't, like, just like me, I didn't think like, oh, like Ryan's gonna have an issue getting like malaria pills. Like, you don't think about that until somebody says like, yeah, only can get it from one place, where, you know,
Yes.
where I was, I could probably go to multiple places, or they'd be like, oh, we'll order it and have it. And there was
Yeah.
no, like, there, nobody bats an eye. So
I
no.
also had issues getting those visas too. Like, I was on a full scholarship, and so it was like a need-based scholarship. And also, I was going to Oxford during the summer, so like I needed my passport. So I left in June for Oxford, and then it was like at some point I was like trying to get to London so I could turn my. I needed 3 visas: the Russian one, the Ghanaian one, and the Brazilian one. And they all cost money, and I couldn't do that mail-in service, and I didn't have money. So when I got on the ship, I had my Russian visa from London. I went to the Russian embassy in London, and I didn't have my other 2 visas. And I was so scared to get on the ship because I thought they were going to turn me away. They didn't end up turning me away, but we all had this big meeting where, you know, a lot of the Chinese students and like the students from Kazakhstan and Japan and Egypt, they had a hard time because they had to get so many visas, and also some of them expired, and it was a mess. And I was like the one American student, and they were like, why didn't you get your visas? And I was like, because I'm broke as hell, and I was traveling. And, you know, the Ghanaian visa we ended up getting in Ghana. Like, we just paid a fee, and like we did in South Africa too, we just paid it there. And then the Brazilian one we got in Argentina, and I went with 2 people. I went with Ablai, who's from Kazakhstan, and then I went with Sumi, who's Japanese, and we got it in Argentina, and the ship helped us arrange for those visas. But that was so stressful. The night before I got on the ship, I was like, oh no, like, I hope they don't like kick me off. Like,
But I think they expect that because who needs a visa and who doesn't need a visa, it can change day to day. Literally anything could happen. They could be like, oh, you need a visa to go to this country, where you didn't beforehand. And whatever your home country is, if there's some type of issue with that country, they'd be like, oh, well, you can't step on the grounds. You have to. And didn't that happen to somebody that had to stay on the ship?
yes, in Russia, actually, there
Yeah.
was one student, and I think she was adopted from Russia. And they were like, we still have you on the books as being Russian. And she was like, I'm fully American. I was adopted into an American family. I don't even speak Russian. And they were like, well, you can't come into the country. And she was like, okay. So that was like sad for her because that was a bad start to the trip. But
Like, and I think that's such a real example of seeing that happen, because I think my greatest issue for me, like doing the visas, was like, I was looking at my mom. I said they want $200 for this, and my mom was looking at me and like, dang, like, so, you know, luckily I did like fundraising, so like ask like people we know to like put money towards, so I could do like excursions and things like that. Because my
oh,
mom,
good for you.
that,
Dang.
that I mean, that's
Yeah.
I think that was definitely the blessing out of all of that, because like you, I got a scholarship for semester at sea, and so I was on there for free, because my mom looked at the price tag and she was like, Justine, we gotta get scholarship, because
Yeah.
mama can't afford this. And I was just like, all right. So I I applied for the scholarship, and thank God I got it. But I think the wild thing was like even the cost after that.
Horrific. I mean, we would sometimes all congregate together like the broke people, and we would all be like, what? The wildest thing about semester at sea was that final day when they had the auction, and people were bidding like thousands of dollars on daddy's credit card to like take a trip to a gold mine. And I was like, that's not me. I mean, we knew people on the ship were a little wealthy. Like, as we would, like, they would get these Airbnbs like in South Africa, and they would do these like skydiving things in Morocco. And I was like, you guys have, and then their families would come visit them in South Africa. I was like, my mother can't even afford like meat from Walmart, much less like coming to like South Africa for a weekend trip to visit me, you know?
And I was just like, well, I think that was the and sometimes in programs, semester C or outside semester C, you can see like financial divide because there were
Yes.
times where I was like, okay, I have the money, I can do this, and sometimes it's like, yeah,
UVA is like that. UVA is like deeply segregated by, I think, not only race, but also economic class for sure. The legacies at the University of Virginia, you get insane preferential treatment, in my opinion, if your parents went to the school. And only now are you starting to get people of color who are benefiting from those legacy programs because the school only integrated in the 1960s, 1970s. So it's like, I mean, it's a lot to look at. So I was prepared for that going on semester at sea.
and it was funny because like I because I was at Bennett, so the whole thing at Bennett was like, oh, if I'm struggling, you struggling, we put our money together and we'll like split a Jimmy John's sandwich.
Not on semester at sea.
Semester it seems like you couldn't really do that. Like there was times we like split meals, but it was because we knew it was going to be like big, and it was. I will say it was harder to not. I don't want to say to survive, but it was harder um to get by how you would at home. Um
Yeah. I
and
mooched off the rich people. I mean, they would be like, Ryan, we want you to come to our Airbnb in South Africa. And I would be like, I cannot afford an Airbnb in South Africa. And they would be like, that's fine. Just come visit and hang out and like have fun. I was like, okay, thank you. Or like in Argentina, same thing. They'd be like, come here. We got an Airbnb. And I'd be like, oh, wonderful. And then I would just show up and I'd be like, I have no money to give. I mean, when we landed in Florida, I had not even booked my trip back to Virginia because I had no money. So I was
got in
like,
the car with us.
I did. I got into a car with my friend Amanda and she drove me to Charlotte, North Carolina. And then I took Amtrak for less than $100 from Charlotte to Richmond. So my parents will kill me because they'll be like, you're going to sound like we weren't taking care of you. I was like, whatever. I was like 21. I was like, I took care of myself. So
But I think that also shows like for people who are regardless of your economic status, you can make study abroad happen. And I think that goes to that shows like, oh, I was gonna do this trip regardless. I was gonna find a way to do it, not break the bank and not go poor. Because there are some people who took out loans specifically for semester at sea.
not
Um,
me. No.
there was no there. I had to get that study abroad like scholarship, and it wasn't like I my mom makes a decent salary, but also had a sister who was in college. So like when you have and I had two younger siblings, so you have that dynamic. It doesn't matter like what your parents make. It's like their money is going towards a house,
Yes.
going towards two different educations, and then two younger kids. So that dynamic is just kind of like, all right, there's nothing here, so you need to find
Yeah.
a way to make it happen. And I think that was like the eye opener. And there were times like I remember I did lose my debit card in Morocco.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
yeah, and tried to pull the money. I tried to go back, and I was like, it wouldn't give me my card back, and so that added. Yeah,
Wow.
I always had to
That
go.
was also where everyone got food poisoning, I remember, and I didn't get food poisoning, and everyone was quarantined.
People got food poisoning, and then they were like, they got bad henna, so they were like, don't get black henna because the black henna could irritate your skin. But I got black henna, and my skin was fine. But my other friend, was it Lisa? I think she broke out, and I was like, well, I was like, oh, thank you. I was like, thank
Yeah,
that was
no.
right because it was the way that they did the henna, they did it on your fingertips and it'll go down your arm. So it was very interesting how each location, everybody had a different experience, although we were having this joint experience.
Yes, yes.
So my next question is, for you, how was it being Ryan abroad with 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 all who you are, all that you know, or all that you knew at the time? Did you find it easier for you in certain spaces, harder for you in certain spaces? How was that being abroad? And it could be semester at sea or when you were in Oxford or whenever you traveled.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice to be abroad. I really enjoyed it. I loved trying new food, and I mean, I definitely felt a little bit ignorant because I had not traveled abroad before. It took me a while to understand what I really wanted out of the experience, right? Um, I was lucky because I got on the ship and you were there, and I knew you, and then yes. And then my friend Amanda, who's one of my best friends in the world, she was there. My friend Rachel was there. All these people that I knew from other places were there. So making friends was super easy because I already had friends and I loved meeting new people on there. And then what I really liked doing was I wasn't really like a planner. Sometimes there were things that I really wanted to see, and then sometimes I would go off on my own to see things that I wanted to see because I loved traveling by myself as well. But then, you know, I I had to learn what I wanted to do. Like, do I want to go to the museums? And then it was like, oh, I've seen enough art at this point to last me a lifetime. And then I was like, do I want to go out clubbing? Because another thing is I didn't drink alcohol in college and we were drug tested, so I wasn't doing drugs. So I was fine, not drinking, but then going out and dancing, while it was fun, it was also I wasn't getting wasted like other people were. So sometimes people would be like, oh, why not? Why aren't you drinking? These kinds of things, but mostly it was fine. I loved staying in the hostels. I loved my favorite thing about going to these countries was meeting people. That's one of my favorite things to do just every day. Living in New York City, I love to meet people. I love to hear their stories. I love to talk to them. That's what's always exciting for me. And there were really interesting people on the ship, but there were also such interesting people that we would meet in the individual countries. And especially one thing that I was desperate to do when I was on the ship was I really wanted to meet gay people in these countries. I wanted to meet queer people. I wanted to go out to gay clubs. I wanted to dance. I mean, I wanted to make out with boys. I wanted to have sex. I wanted to do all these things, right? I mean, I was excited. I had even been seeing, I had come out as gay to my family the semester before I went on semester at sea. So I was 21. I had not been open with them about that, but I had been seeing boys at UVA, and I was with a boy that I had a summer fling with because I took classes over the summer at UVA and then went to Oxford and then went on semester at sea. So it was a really great summer for me. And the boy at UVA was oh, you're going on semester at sea. Do you want to stay together and do long distance? I was absolutely not. I was no. I was no, that's not, no. I was I'm about to go to these incredible places. No, I'm not going to be in a monogamous relationship. I was I'm 21 and I'm about to go to 4 different continents. I was no, I don't want to be in a long distance relationship with you. I'm so sorry. That was a very easy answer for me. So and we went to such a variety of countries, and I was so psyched. When I was at Oxford, there was this really cute boy who was actually serving the food at Oxford, and he was so handsome, and I was in a very gay program because I was in a theater program, and all the boys all the boys thought he was cute. They all thought he was cute. And we would all sort of make eyes at him and talk to him when we would go through the line to get our food. And sometimes we would see him out when we would go dancing in Oxford. It was the Purple Turtle or something, if you know that. And so one night me and this other boy were like talking to this guy, Oscar, and he was Spanish and he was there serving the food because the Spain's economy was really bad at the time, but he was a civil engineer, but he was working in the cafeteria because he couldn't find employment in Spain. And it was so funny because that night, like me and this other boy were talking to him, and the other boy was like, asked him like, do you want to go home together in Oxford? And he like paused, and then he looked at me and he was like, I actually want to go home with Ryan. And I was like, oh my God, really? Because I was so shy. So I was like, oh wow, okay, yes, please. It's like, let's do it. That was great. Like, and that was really funny because then after he did his summer in Oxford, he went back to Spain and he lived in Granada, which is like this beautiful city in the mountains, like south of Madrid. And I stayed in touch with him. And when we went to Portugal, when we were in Lisbon, we were allowed to go to Spain, and a lot of people just went to like Ibiza and Valencia on the East Coast, which I would love to do. I still haven't been. But Oscar was like, if you come to Granada, I will show you around the Alhambra. You can sleep at my place. I'll cook you food. I'll show you around. And I was like, oh my God, absolutely yes. So that's where I spent. And that to this day, Granada is still one of like the most beautiful places I've ever been. He like bought us tapas like on this like mountainside, like a restaurant. It was gorgeous, so romantic. Like there was like candlelight, and it was a beautiful, like warm night. And that was like a great start to my trip. So, and I was like, I'm already meeting gay people. This is excellent. So that's like one of my goals.
No, I think that's so amazing, because going somewhere and finding likeness in people of the area, I think a lot of times that doesn't happen. People go and they're like, oh, I'm just here to eat and to shop. Like there's no connection with the people. But hearing that you actively went out and was like, oh no, like I'm going to find the gay community here because those are my people, and really having a different experience, and having how can I say this? Not just having a different experience, but really like intentionally making your experience what you wanted. And
Yes.
and I think that's because you said earlier how you had to decide what you wanted to do. And I love like once you made the decision, you were like, all right, this is where I'm going to do it. And you did it. Man.
In some countries it worked. In some countries it didn't work. Like, and the other thing was there were a lot of queer people on the ship, and we were all at like different levels of like our comfortability with like being queer and being in relationships. Some people were like very politically queer. Some people were more romantically queer. Some people were closeted, but like, you know, on the ship, they weren't openly gay, but they were hooking up with other gay people on the ship, you know, and then things like that. You know, I didn't have a smartphone then, but there's apps that you can use to like find gay people in these cities, like, and they sort people based on distance and stuff. And, you know, I didn't have that. So I actually, I'm glad that I didn't have it, because it was more so I wasn't meeting up with one person who like just wanted to have sex or like make out or something. I had to like go out into the scene and like, you know, we on the ship who were queer, we all slowly learned like some people were looking to party and other people were looking to like just meet friends, and other people were in relationships and some weren't. So, you know, at the beginning, a lot of us were like, let's all stick together and find queer places to go and queer things to do. And then as we like got further in the trip, we were like, oh, we're all looking for different things. Like we shouldn't be going out together because like some of us are like getting wasted and others of us like don't drink. And some of us, a lot of the queer spaces in these countries, like in the United States, are very segregated based on gender. And so it's like we would go out with queer women. And like if you were a guy who wanted to go out, you know, and have sex, if you went out with queer women, you would not meet queer men in these spaces, you know, and vice versa. So that was something. I mean, one of my best friends at the beginning of the trip was Colleen. I don't know if you remember Colleen. and she was great, but like at some point it was like, Colleen, I don't think we should go out together in this country because like I'm looking to do something very specific and I don't think that you're gonna have as much fun doing what I'm looking to do, you know? And she was fine with that. She was fine. Or like Kay, if you remember Kay, like she was you know, looking to party too. So like when we went out in Argentina, like I went out with Kay because I was like, oh, I'm looking to dance. Like, and that was difficult sometimes too because a lot of the people on the ship were straight and they wanted to go out and like, you know, it's a classic queer story. Like even in college in the United States, you go out, you have fun, you dance, you drink, but you're at a straight place. So like you're not making out with random people at these clubs. Like you're not grinding with these people. You're not like meeting people who are flirting with you because it's like it's not for you. And that would happen in these countries too, where it was like it was fun to go out and do that. Like I loved going dancing with like Melody and Alex and them,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you know I went out dancing with like other people. But at some point, it's also like I want to be in a queer space and like I want to be doing this there. Like I want that. So, you know, that was a big thing for us. I think that we realized pretty quickly. So, but it was, you know, in some countries it was super easy to find. Like Germany, I mean, you could find queer people in Berlin so easily. I mean, Berlin's pretty well integrated in that the
Yeah.
clubs are gay and straight. When we were in Paris,
Hmm.
they had just legalized same-sex marriage in France, which is like a very deeply Catholic country,
Hmm.
and all of the bars were full of like the bartenders were dressed up like priests and nuns, like as clergy. And I still have a glow in the dark plastic rosary that this like very cute bartender like put around my neck, and I was like, oh my. And I went with Jake, if you remember Jake, who now lives in Berlin, and we were out and that was super fun. Like, you know, it was great.
Jake was my rap partner in Ghana.
Ah.
Especially in Ghana, I forgot we were rapping some song, and as we were walking through the university. But no, thank you for sharing that the because going to somewhere, and even like I can be with other people and I'd be like, oh, I don't want to do this, I want to do that. And so finding like people like, oh, okay, we're traveling here together. Like I would say my main travel partner was Lisa. We knew like,
Right.
all right, we're gonna go out, we're gonna do this, do that, and we're gonna get food. And that's going to lead me to, I think, one of your greatest accomplishments for a semester at sea, outside of all the other amazing things, was starting the best and the most populated club on the ship.
Oh my god. Yes.
Can you tell everybody about Food Forever and the mission for Food Forever?
Food forever. Food forever was just, you know, eat forever. Like food, food, food. It was just like, you know, we were allowed to start clubs at the beginning, and I love eating. And that was big for me in every single country, the food. And it was cheap in a lot of places too. So you could eat. And also on the ship, we had endless food. We had ice cream forever. We had like all these kinds of meats, all these kinds of potatoes, all these kinds of veggies, so much bread, that like endless bread. I mean, it's wild. And of course me, like I am very lucky. I don't put on weight no matter like what I do. It just doesn't happen. So a food forever was easy for me. I was like, we're going to eat it all. Like, and you fill up your plate because they're just going to throw that food away too. They didn't donate or anything. So I was like, go get like all the little treats that they have for dessert. Even if you don't eat them all, just take a bite of each, because it's like they're just gonna throw it all away. So I would go and get like all the little pastries, and it'd just be like food forever. And you know, food's something everyone can get behind. So I was like, thank you for this. And people did take it seriously. Like I started it as kind of a joke, but then people would really like, we'd be like food forever, and we would be like, what did you eat in this port? And it would be like, oh, that's delicious. Like I'm so sad that, you know, like, or we would prepare, we'd be like, so what are we going to get in Spain? We're going to get paella, and we would get good paella, take pictures of the food. Like it was good.
No, and I think that's the one thing I like, because part of Food Forever was to leave. There was that big a notepad and people would write where they went to eat, like where is really good food, and like they're like this place is so
Yes.
good. And I thought that was for the Food Forever community, which is basically the entire ship. We all took part of that. We would look like, oh, what's that? And from that notepad, I found out this steak place, this steak restaurant in Argentina that had a cocktail hour and everything on the list was half off. And
Oh, so good.
like we were like, we're going. And we went. We were like, still to this day, it's like probably one of the best steaks I've ever had in my life. But
Oh, so good.
the
We went in Argentina, we went to eat steak with a taxi driver, and it was Nan. Do you remember Nan?
mhm,
And she was from Berkeley, and she was like asked out on a date by a taxi driver, but she didn't speak Spanish. So I went and like helped translate, and we ate this delicious steak, and he paid for it for all of us. And we also got like the parts of the animal, like the delicacy, like the
mhm.
ear and the liver and like the kidney and stuff. And we ate that, and it was also so good. And it was free. He pulled out this wad of cash from his taxi tips and paid for all of it. It was amazing. I was like, my goodness,
Oh
that was
my God,
great.
you were living the life, Ryan. I feel like I missed all these parts.
It was good. I mean, that was wild. I had so many adventures, and the food was great. The people were great. It's really interesting too because while my travels were like very queer focused and stuff, I feel like a lot of my friends that I hung out with the most were not queer people on the ship. And also like it's really funny too because like I was a little older, like I was a senior when I went on semester at sea, and there were some kids there who were like sophomores and freshmen. They were like babies, and a lot of them weren't openly gay either. And now after all of this, like they've reached out and they've been like, oh, like I just wanted to let you know I came out or whatever. And sometimes when before you come out, you're like afraid to be gay, to be like friends with gay people because you're afraid that people will think you're gay. And that's like your biggest fear before you come out, is that somebody will think that you're gay before you tell them that you're gay. And
Mm-hmm.
so like they would be afraid to hang out with me because they would be, and that's sad too, because it's like I had a great time being gay on this trip. Like I met lots of cute boys. I think they did too. Like even if they were closeted, like they would go out into the countries and like hook up with boys and hook up with girls like under the table. But it was like I had fun because like I was going out to the bars and like meeting those people there, and like it was fun because it wasn't just about hooking up with people, it was also about like the culture and the music. Like when I was in Madrid, I just like walked through the gay section and like made eye contact with cute boys and like all these things. Thank God I wasn't drinking then, because I would have been like a mess in these little neighborhoods all over Europe. It would have been a mess, but it was fun. Like, and even like when I was in Morocco or like like South Africa had an incredible gay scene. I mean, it's known, Cape Town is known as like a gay mecca, especially on the continent. But it's really interesting because while the gay bars were very diverse, they were also pretty segregated. You know what I mean? Like, so by race, because like those racial problems in South Africa maintain themselves, even in the country. So it was like a little segregated, the places that we went, but there were still all kinds of people there. I think that the bars were probably more segregated actually, like in Paris, where I felt like I only saw white people in Paris at the bars. We would meet other people. The other thing that was funny about going out to gay bars in Paris and in Berlin was that you would meet all these Americans who were studying abroad, and you were like, oh, I'm also American studying abroad. But it's different when you're in semester at sea, because like they'll meet you and they'll be like, oh, you're an American, you're here all semester, and it would be like, no, I'm only here for like 5 days and then I
Like,
leave. Really nice to meet you. But it was cool because sometimes you would meet them and you would find out like fun gay things to do, or they would be like, I want you to come over to my apartment and hang out, like meet my friends. And you were like, oh, I can't, I'll be gone by Monday. Like, I'm so sorry. Which was interesting. Morocco, like, sometimes too, I felt very comfortable like in Ghana and in Morocco. Like the tour guides are used to dealing with Americans, right? They're used to it. Like even if they're locals, a lot of times they've studied abroad in Europe. So it's not an uncomfortable question to ask these people, like, where are the gay people at? Like, how does it work? They're not going to lie to you. Like in Ghana, we had like a Black American man who was our guide, and he would recommend places for us to go. And he was just straight up. He was like, yeah, there's gay bars around here. And the interesting thing that I found about gay bars in every country, like whether it was Russia or Paris or Morocco or Ghana or even Argentina, is that there were the bars, like the gay bars, that were the touristy gay bars. And like, if you were there, you heard a lot of English, or you heard a lot of like, and then in each of those countries, you had like the local bars. So you had like, you know, like in Ghana, I feel like they were a little bit more underground. In Russia, they were more underground. But then even in New York City, where I live, you have the touristy gay bars, and then you have like the New Yorker gay bars, right? Like the gay bars where you go, where like the drinks are cheaper and they're in like a little bit off the beaten path, and it's not as much dancing. It's more like, you know, drinking and talking. It's, you know, it's different. It's a different experience. And that was the interesting thing. Like in Russia, you know, it's very taboo to be gay there, especially when we went in 2013. Yeah. There were laws that were criminalizing it, but also like we have privilege as expats, because people were like, are you scared to be gay in Russia? And I was like, no, because I'm an American. And if you're an American, you're protected by the government and by the stigma. In the same way, if you go to certain bars in Berlin and you show an American passport, you get in faster. You know, like I remember we were in line for a bar in Berlin, and they were like, oh, if you're American, like you can just walk up to the front because they'll let you in, you know. Obviously, like sometimes an American passport will also like hurt you, because they'll be like, don't, you know, we don't like you. But that was really interesting, going to different gay bars, because, you know, also sometimes it would help you, because they'd be like, they'll exoticize you, because they're like, oh, well, where are you from? Oh, America. Oh, you're American. And even on like dating apps in those different countries, I know some guys, when they would be on Grindr, which is like specifically for sex, like hookups, if you put a little American flag in your bio, a lot of men will like block you, and then other men will like seek you out, because they're like, oh, I want to hook up with an American, you know?
Wow. And that's interesting, because the idea that being American can be a privilege in one area, and in another area it can like damn you, and they'll be like, forget you, like we don't want you. And it was so interesting experiencing that. And I think I experienced that more in European countries, because, you know, once we hit the equator, and we're, you know, once we hit Africa, it was just kind of like, oh, like, you're returning home from university? And I was like, 400 years later. But no, thank you for sharing that, because I want those who are listening or who are watching to be able to really understand for themselves, like when they go abroad, if they're like, I'm a member of the LGBTQ plus community, or I'm not out yet, so how do I maneuver in these spaces when I go abroad? Because you do find yourself more comfortable with yourself, regardless of whatever community you're part of. When you're abroad, you kind of settle into this. You settle into yourself in a specific way or in a different way, and you find yourself being more free. Like, I know I'm more free abroad than I am in the States.
Wow.
Just living in general, how I move, what things I do, and
yeah, I don't want people to like get too much in their heads either, because, you know, there were a lot of people from like Georgia and Mississippi and Alabama and Texas who were on the trip, and I know Russia really well because I studied Russian politics, and they were queer, and they were like, I'm really nervous about Russia. How should I act in Russia? And I was like, well, how do you act in Mississippi? How do you act in Georgia? I was like, there are parts of Georgia that are definitely less safe for queer people than in St. Petersburg, Russia, which is like a major metropolitan city, you know. And I think also that when you're navigating it, you know, if you're queer and you go to a different country and you're going to hook up with someone, you know, like women deal with this too. It's like, how are women treated in these places, right? In the same way, it's like, how are gay people treated in these places? Because, you know, in some of these countries, having an openly gay long-term relationship is nearly impossible for most people in the country. But, you know, if you're just there to have hookups, like lots of people will have hookups in those countries. But then it's also like, if you're in a country with a really regressive mentality towards like gay relationships, if you're about to go hook up with a man, it can be really nerve-wracking. In the same way, if you're like living in like really country Tennessee and you go to, or even like North Carolina, if you go to hook up with a man, like, you know not to expect romance, because like they don't romanticize same-sex male relationships. Like, they have this, like, they have been taught and socialized, even though they are queer, that like you're not supposed to even like enjoy sex with a man or with a woman, right? Like, you're not supposed to feel good during these things. It's like this desire that you're very ashamed of, and you have, in that, like, in intimate interactions, you feel it. You know, whether you're in a frat house at UVA or like, you know, a bar off the beaten track in, you know, Ghana or something, it's like you're going to feel that this man has a complicated relationship to his sexuality when you're kissing him, when you're having sex with him, you know, those kinds of things. And it's as sad as it is if you're in like the South or the Midwest, as it is if you're in like Ghana or Morocco, you know. And it's tough, but I mean, you know, I think queer people, if you're newly out, it's something you're not so like used to. If you've been out for a while, it's just like, that would break my heart if somebody like went to a country abroad and was like, you know, oh, I'm like, this boy asked me to come get a drink, like, this is going to be so romantic, and then he's like, let's go back to my house, like, don't tell anyone about this, my wife is out, you know, like these kinds of things. Like, that's a very different experience, which I don't want it to, you know, I don't want it to sound like it's like something that only happens in Morocco or Ghana, because it for sure happens in Georgia and Alabama and Virginia. I mean, it even happens in New York City itself. Like, there are people here who are closeted. And, you know, that's a big thing that I think that I learned from studying abroad, was just like, it's really clear how like the cultures, you know, the cultural relationship to queer relationships and queer identity, and even to sexuality at all, you know, bleeds in to the way that, like, if you are pursuing these like intimate relationships in these countries, it's gonna affect it, you know. It's gonna be in like the holding of the hand and the looking in the eyes, and you know. But if you've been gay in the South, it's like nothing you're not used to. Like,
I remember first hearing you say that, and I was like, I guess he's right. Like, and I like looking at like friends that I had in high school that I never like. I guess it's like you just knew, and there was no like coming out, that they like didn't need to like come out to me. I was just like, oh, okay, like, keep going on about life. Like, okay, that's fine. And seeing how they moved, like, even within their family, and then
yeah,
now, and like comparing that, like, even like your story when you would say certain things like from jobs you had, you you were like, yeah, like, I'm just gonna act like I'm at home, like, in that idea of like having a code switch with your with a part of who you are. It's I think it's interesting. It's something that I don't have to do on that level. I don't have to code switch when it comes to like my sexuality or anything like that. But being able to see that, and it's just like, wow, like, that's something I'll have to go through, and like, I commend you for that, because that's a lot.
well, I even learned a lot from that experience. I mean, and I wasn't just looking for like intimate relationships with queer people in these countries, but also like friendships, and just to like learn, like, hey, what's your experience? Like, when I would go to Ghana and be like, where are the gay bars? I wasn't looking to like hook up. I was like, I want to talk to these people and like get to know them and like make friends and, you know, maybe stay in touch. Like, I think that that'll be cool. And, you know, it's also interesting, like, being queer, going to some of these countries too, because, you know, you also just have to be, you know, you're certainly like sensitive, like, in the sense of like, when we went to Ghana, we went out dancing, but I wasn't like, and I saw boys that were so cute, and I was like, I wish, you know what I mean? But you also have to understand that, like, you have to be so careful when you're in these countries, especially me being like a white person, being an American. If I go to France and I'm in Paris and I'm like, what's your experience like here? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot different from me going to Morocco and being like, what's your experience like here? Because, you know, that can quickly turn into a colonial narrative, you know, and you have to be sure that like you're just interested in them as a person. I mean, back then I was especially like very young, very naive, and I think that I could definitely navigate that much better now than I could have then. But in South Africa, for instance, you know, there's a very high like HIV rate in that country. And as queer people, we are probably more sensitive to navigating relationships in communities where there might be a high HIV rate. Because like you know, I have heard about HIV since I was like a teenager, as like, if you're gay, you have a higher risk of getting it. There's more people in your community who have it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, also in South Africa, for instance, like it's very racialized, like the way that people have access to services for HIV and education about like protecting yourself from these things and resources to like, you know, advocate for your own personal health. And I heard from straight people when we were in South Africa about like they were nervous to have casual hookups in the country because they thought like, oh, well, the HIV rate is higher here, so that might be an issue. And I thought that that was very interesting to hear, you know, first of all, like that's very racialized. But secondly, it's right. But it's true. I mean, like, for instance, if you're queer in the United States, you are told that you have a higher risk of contracting HIV. And it's true that if you go into a country where the risk of HIV just in the general population is higher than if you're straight, you have a higher risk of contracting HIV because of the just like the demographic of the country having like less resources to deal with the spread of that, even though they've done an incredible job with reducing the rate of HIV spread in that country. But, you know, and these were also not just white people who I heard saying these things. It was also people of color. It was Black people who were saying like, I don't want to, you know, like contract HIV by hooking up with a stranger in one of these countries. And it was really interesting because like this is something that I have thought about for over a decade, and I feel like I can speak about it more delicately than those people who I do think that a lot of straight people have hookups in college. And while maybe they're worried about like getting pregnant or getting another STI or something, HIV is like not on their mind in the way that it is for us as queer people. And I thought that that was like a really interesting part of studying abroad and dealing with hookup culture in these places was that, you know? So that was really interesting for me. It was like, you could just educate yourself on like we went and visited those sex workers in Cape Town, South Africa for our human sexuality class. And they talked about the spread of STIs. And I learned so much from it, like in how to learn, like how to humanize these stories and about like practicing safe sex and about like the families behind these stories. Like a lot of them were mothers, a lot of them, you know, and that was like a really, really beneficial like excursion that we took in semester at sea. But that was one thing that really stood out for me, like straight versus queer, was the way that it was HIV was spoken about in these varying countries, you know?
No, and I think that's dead on. And it sounds like a lot of things came down to that, like when people would say things, and I'll just be like, really? Like, did they just say that? And I'm just like, okay. Like, I'm just like, just mind your business. Look at your iPad, Justine. But
right, but it's same with gay people, because some gay people would go to a country and they'd be like, we're all gonna die, and I would be like, you're American. I was like, you like are going into these countries like speaking English from America. I was like, you have like a bulletproof window around you. I was like, as if like, when is the last time, and this is serious, that you heard like the queer people in a lot of those countries deal with a lot of prejudice, a lot of obstacles. But when is the last time that you heard some American or European going to Russia, going to Ghana, going to Morocco, like these countries where we received warnings about how homosexuality was criminalized? when have you heard of Americans being attacked for being gay? You can go there, and if you are American or European, you, because of colonialism, you get away with anything that you want.
Mhm.
And
You know.
also, a lot of those anti-gay laws are from a colonial legacy. Like,
Mhm.
Europe made those laws, and it's really sad because now Americans can go to those countries and be as gay as they want to be. Like, obviously you can't like hold hands with your partner. I mean, there's things about booking hotel rooms where like you can't be openly gay, like, but those are things that I feel like queer people do in their own countries as well. Like, that you're going to face, glances, you're going to face extra looks. I mean, you certainly can't go to Russia as a man and kiss another man on the lips in like an erotic way. You will face prejudice for that. But I was like, that like, you're not going to go to like certain parts of other countries too and do that. I'm not going to go to, certain parts of North Carolina and do that at the Walmart. So it's nothing you don't do in your own country, but you are always, like when I was in Morocco, when I was in Russia, when I was in Ghana, when I was in South Africa, and homosexuality is legal in South Africa, but it's this thing of like, I knew I had more privilege than the people who were native to that country in
Mhm.
every single country that I went to be gay.
Mhm.
And you always know that. So,
No, and I think that's thank you for sharing like the privilege of being gay and being able to still maneuver as gay in these spaces where people locally can't maneuver that way. Because I think sometimes we don't digest things that way. And I know sometimes I don't digest things just as being American. I'm like, I ain't gonna do this because I'm not trying to go missing. Like, I forget my Americanness. And I think sometimes for me it's good that I forget it because it helps me like really settle into like where I am. But yeah, like the idea of like who what they gonna do to you is, I think, is a really good example. So
yeah, because I can hide it. Like I can hide that. I'm not holding someone's hand. I'm not kissing. People of color and women for sure have much like they really had to like they had to change the way they dressed.
mhm.
They had to change the way they spoke. They had to change their plans about where they were going and when. I never had to do that. I'm a white man. You know what I mean? Like I never had to do any of that. I was fine. And
No.
I still got to like have hookups in some of these places, and it is crazy that I was still able. It's like people were like, "I'm scared to be gay here." I was like, "Okay, well, sorry for
Like, see you
you."
later. I'm gonna do this.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, trans people for sure, a very different experience,
Oh,
of course.
yeah.
Gender queer, like gender, but again, I think that's more about gender rather than sexuality for me. I mean, I think that once again, the same that cis women had a lot of trouble in these countries, I'm sure that people who defied the gender lines had a much more restrictive time on these trips.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's definitely thinking about that. Like, even going to some, I guess the most conservative country we went to was Morocco when we were in Casablanca.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember getting off the ship and the advisor, because semester at sea. For those who don't know, semester at sea, each time we go to each country, there's somebody of that country. They're a diplomat or an ambassador in some way, and they, you can ask them questions before getting off the ship about what to do, where to go. And so when we got the cultural disembark for Morocco, they said, well, if you're going to be in Casablanca, you do want to wear long skirts. And they let you know before we got there that you should probably get one or two long skirts. And I remember like getting it because I had been to Lebanon, so it was cool to me. I was like, okay, cool, just
Yeah.
out. And some girls had like sheer skirts, and I feared for them because I was like, that is not gonna fly. Like Lebanon is very liberal Middle Eastern country, whereas Casablanca in Morocco is just more conservative. And they were like, well, you can go to Marrakesh or Rabat, which are less more liberal, less conservative. And so seeing that dynamic, I seeing how like some people came back with different stories, like, oh, this happened and that happened, and luckily I didn't have those experiences, but I saw how it could have happened, and it was heartbreaking because it's just like, oh my gosh, like this really sucks.
Yeah. And that never happened to me in Morocco. I mean, I wasn't like making out with boys in Morocco or anything, but there were also like you would see gay people in Morocco. Like we were on a camel thing and there were these two German guys who were so cute and I had such a crush on them. But you also wonder as queer people, it's like we're gay, we're in Morocco, like we were like being kind of flirty, but it's also like how flirty can you be with each other, right? So that is in your head and stuff like that. But it's also like we're in the middle of the desert and we haven't showered in 2 days. So it's like, what are we doing? Like, there is no romance. There is no, we're not feeling hot. We're feeling like messy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to put my mouth on you. Like, we have not bathed. Like,
All right. So, quick question, and this is our last question. What was tell us your favorite place you've been to and your least favorite place you've been to.
oh, that's a good one. My favorite place that I've ever been to. I mean, I had such a beautiful time in Granada, Spain. I thought it was gorgeous. I love the mountains. I was with that boy. He was like a civil engineer. So we walked the Alhambra together and he was like, this is how they, like the Arabs designed it so that the water would do stuff. And like, they designed it so that the sunlight would come in and like create these beautiful like shadows and images. It was gorgeous. It was so romantic. I don't think I've ever felt that romantic. Like, and I was so young and like my eyes were so wide. So I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing that's ever happened. My least favorite place, let me see. We went to like, that's tough. I mean, I don't really have like a least favorite place. I'm trying to think about where all we went. I mean, probably on the trip, Le Havre was probably not my favorite place. That was in France, and it's like a city made of concrete. I appreciated the history of it, and we were only there for 1 day.
Yeah.
But if I had probably like, I always feel privileged to travel, so I hate picking like a least favorite place. But I like, yeah, I would probably pick there, you know. I mean, also like besides Granada, I also loved Brazil. Like Brazil was so great. And that was a place where we went where like there were gay people everywhere and you could just like it wasn't like us, it was like one of those places where like we're coming into like an established gay scene in a place that is very gay, but also gay people there face a lot of obstacles, but like also I had a good time there, but I'm also very pale. And I was like on that beach in a sunga and people were like, how are people so pale as this poor boy? And my mom's Mexican. So I'm used to being like the only white boy on like a beach in Latin America. And everyone's like, this poor, pathetic, like leper is like suffering on the beach. So those are my two favorites, and then like probably my least favorite was Le Havre, but it was very lovely. I mean, you were by the ocean, but we only spent 1 day there, and I think 1 day was probably enough for me. That was enough at Le Havre. So
yeah, no, completely understandable. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ryan.
So good to see you. It's so nice. You are so brilliant and just beautiful. And I am so happy that you asked me to do this. Thank you so much.
Well, really quickly, can you tell everybody where they can follow you? If there's a website or any of your work that you want to share?
Yes. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to be in an episode of The Other Two, which is coming out on HBO Max in the fall. It's very fun. It's this fun gay show that's written by Chris Kelly and Sarah Schneider, who used to be on SNL. It's super funny. You can follow Off Magazine at AWF Mag on Instagram and Twitter. And then you can follow me on Instagram at All My Problems with a Z. And then you can follow me on Twitter at Sad Pale Twink, which is I had to get a new name because I was banned from Twitter, sadly. But That's where you can follow me for more.
I love it. No, again, thank you so much for coming, for taking this trip to Russia with us and having a good time. It's always amazing spending time for you, and I'm so grateful that you came and you
Yes.
shared your story. And I'm just so grateful. I can't wait to see you in person to hug you.
I know. I can't wait to see you in person. Can't wait to hear all of your podcasts. I'm sure they're all going to be so great. So,
Oh, thank you. All right.
yeah.
Well, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
We ask that you please remain seated until the Master G turns off the fasten your seatbelt sign.
All right, now it's time to re enter back into life, unpack, and share all the knowledge you got today. And get ready for our next adventure with another global homie and me, Justine, your Master G of Study Abroad Like a G, the podcast. And also remember to subscribe to this podcast, follow us on Facebook at Study Abroad Like a G, and you can also follow us on Instagram at Study Abroad underscore like a G. If you have any questions, go on and you can slide in my DMs on Facebook or Instagram. Or if you have a lengthy question, you can go on and email me at hbcusgoglobal at gmail.com. That is hbcusgoglobal at gmail.com. See you next time.